Hi everyone, I'm Rosalind Wyburn and I'm pleased to present to you on behalf of Aussie Deaf Kids NDIS 101, Lessons Learned as a parent of an NDIS participant and in my role as a Senior Support Coordinator. This is a general discussion on my personal experience and does not constitute specific advice or recommendations for you or your family. Please seek authorised independent advice for your specific circumstances. This presentation is by myself, Rosalind Wyburn, and does not necessarily represent the view or opinions of Aussie Deaf Kids. I begin today with acknowledging that I am presenting from the lands of the Awabakal people. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we meet from and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be participating in this webinar. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples through their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of all states and territories. The content I will be presenting on today will be NDIS overview and structure, preparing for a plan review, preparing plan review reports, plan review discussion points, requesting a review of a plan, the complaints process, and then there'll be a slide with information resources links. So this shows slides the basic structure of the NDIS Act. The National Disability Insurance Agency, known as the NDIA, is the Commonwealth agency responsible with the delivery of the NDIS. The National Disability Insurance Scheme, the Act 2013, establishes the scheme and contains overarching laws on how the NDIS operates. These laws can only be amended by the Commonwealth Parliament. The National Disability Insurance Scheme is a national scheme governed by the NDIS Act 2013. It first commenced as trial sites in 2013 and was introduced progressively across all states and territories. It is now full scheme. The NDIS provides support to eligible people with intellectual, physical, sensory, cognitive and psychosocial disability. It also provides early intervention supports for eligible people with disability or children with developmental delay. The NDIS gives all Australians peace of mind if they, their child or a loved one is born or acquires a permanent and significant disability. They will then get the support they need. The NDIS is not a welfare system. It is designed to help people get the support they need so their skills and independence improve over time. The NDIS rules are legislative instruments made under the Act and set out more detailed operation of the NDIS. The operational guidelines set out some of the NDIA's operational information. They are based on the NDIS legislation and rules. They explain what the planner delegate needs to consider and how to make decisions based on the legislation. There are currently 40 operational guidelines and the NDIA are updating them all the time, and here are some reference links to the operational guidelines. The scheme's NDIS outcomes framework has a responsibility to enable participants to meet their goals or an accepted goal. Through monitoring outcome measures over time, it will enable assessment of how well the agency is assisting participants to achieve their goals. There are 8 outcome domains in the framework and help participants to think about what goals in different life areas they wish to explore, and it will also assist planners to seek out supports in areas that already exist and advise whether further supports are required. I'll go into these domains later in the presentation. Moving on to understanding the NDIS funding criteria, the key factors to accessing funding. For the purpose of becoming a participant in the NDIS, the focus of disability is on the reduction or loss of an ability to perform an activity which results from an impairment. The term impairment commonly refers to a loss or damage to a physical, sensory or mental function. The narrower definition of disability employed by the NDIS seeks to target those people with disability who have a significant impairment to their functional capacity. This functional definition of disability focuses on outcomes for the people with disability that are in the most need. A prospective participant will meet the disability requirement if they meet each of the following requirements. The participant has a disability to one or more impairment. It is a permanent disability, and it substantially reduces their functional capacity to undertake one or more of the following: communication, social interaction, learning, mobility, self-care or self-management. All funding requests for supports and services by the NDIS must meet the reasonable and necessary criteria under Section 34 of the NDIS Act. A reasonable and necessary support or service must be related to your permanent disability, must not include day-to-day living costs unrelated to your disability, should represent value for money, and must be likely to be effective and work for you. It also takes into account support given to you by others, such as government services and your family. It's important to note that it must meet all the reasonable and necessary criteria. Here is a list of supports that the NDIS does not fund. They don't fund supports if it's likely to cause harm, it's not related to your disability, it duplicates other supports, it considers day-to-day living costs not attributable or caused by the participant's disability, it would be against the law, it consists of income replacement, or it is the responsibility of other service systems such as health and education. In summary, the supports need to be related to your disability, value for money, effective and beneficial, and most appropriately funded or provided by the NDIS. Each support must meet the criteria individually, but the supports must meet the criteria when considered as a package. So what type of supports does the NDIS fund? It funds daily personal activities, funding for transport to workplace and around the community, therapeutic supports including a behaviour support plan, help with household tasks, mobility equipment and funding for setup and assessment, home modification, design and construction, and vehicle modifications. Another key point that the NDIS considers when funding supports is that they are not only effective for the participant, but regarded to be good current practice and beneficial for someone with a similar disability. Supports won't be funded if they are not evidence-based. I like this visual and always like to pop it in. It's from the Western Australian Individualised Services on reasonable and necessary supports. In summary, the supports need to be related to your disability, value for money, effective and beneficial, and most appropriately funded or provided by the NDIS. Each support must meet these criteria individually, but the supports must also meet the criteria when considered as a package. And Ways is a great resource for information. Another great resource, previously known as the NDIS Price Guide, now called the NDIS Pricing Arrangements and Price Limits, it's released at the start of each financial year and updated as required. The purpose of the guide is to assist participants and providers to understand the ways in which price controls work in the NDIS, and the price regulation is in place to help and ensure that participants receive value for money when they purchase the supports that they need. There are additional documents linked to the price guide, and these documents are available on the website. Each support that a provider supplies to a participant can be classified as one of the support items listed in the NDIS Pricing Arrangements and Price Limits and in the NDIS support catalogues. These categories can be relevant to the rules for participants and how they can spend their support budgets, and for providers when seeking payment for delivered supports. Each support budget has a specific support purpose, and each support budget has rules for use. Each support purpose aligns to the NDIS Outcomes Framework that has 8 domains. Within each support budget are support categories, and there are a total of 15 support categories across the 3 support budgets. Participant budgets are allocated at a support category level and must be used to achieve the goals set out in the participant's plan. There are 8 outcome domains in the framework which help participants think about goals in different areas of their life and assist planners to explore where supports in these already exist and where further supports are required. And these are the 8 domains: the daily living, home, health and well-being, lifelong learning, work, social and community participation, relationships, and choice and control. I've included this table to show the links between the 3 support purpose types, that is the core, capital and capacity building, and how it flows across the 8 domains in the NDIS outcomes framework and their support categories. So what do we get in the core supports bucket of funding? Core supports enable participants to complete activities of daily living, support current disability-related needs, and support participants to work towards the goals. Core support budget is the most flexible to choose supports from, and the rule with core support funding that it can be spent flexibly across the 4 support categories but cannot reallocate the funding for other support purposes in the capital and capacity building support bucket of funding. I have included this slide as a reference, and it shows the support categories as written in your plan under core supports. The second column in My Place portal shows how the support category is written when self-managing and claiming payment via the MyGov My Place portal. It also has a description of the 4 core support categories. The second bucket of money is capital supports. Capital supports are considered investments and include higher cost pieces of assistive technology, equipment, home or vehicle modification, and is usually funding for one-off purchases that you may need. The rule with capital supports is that the funding can only be used for their specific purpose and purchase of specific items as approved by the NDIA in the participant's plan. So this slide shows the 2 categories of funded supports in capital supports. It also shows how they are written if you're claiming via the MyGov My Place portal, and it has a description of the 2 support categories in capital supports. The third bucket of funding support purpose is building capacity supports. These supports are provided to build your independence and skills to help you reach your goals. The rule with capacity building budget is that it is not flexible. The funding cannot be utilised to purchase supports within one of the other 9 capacity building support categories. And here is the list and description of the 9 categories as written in your plan and in the My Place portal. So here is a great visual summary of everything I've just discussed regarding the purpose of funding for supports. It shows planning for a good life, which shows the 8 outcome domains, the purpose of the funding supports in the core, capital and capacity building, and then how they relate to the different support categories across the purpose of supports funding. A question you'll be asked in your planning conversation is how would you like your funds managed in your NDIS plan. So there are 4 options for managing your NDIS funding. The first is agency management, or NDIA managed, as it will be written in your plan management, self-management, or a combination of the 3 ways above. If you choose the NDIA to manage your support funding, known as agency management, the NDIA will pay your support provider directly. You can only engage registered providers for your supports and services, and you must adhere to the arrangements in the NDIS pricing arrangements and price limits, including ensuring that the prices do not exceed the price limits. And this is the least flexible method of managing your funds, but it might be the easiest way for you to do that. The next method of managing your funds is plan management. The NDIS provides funding in your plan for a registered third party known as a financial intermediary. Your providers of support send their invoices directly to the plan manager for payment on your behalf. They ensure prices do not exceed the price limits, and your funding can be spent with both registered providers and unregistered providers. It gives you increased control over how you utilise the funding in your plan. You can also choose to self-manage your NDIS plan. You utilise the NDIS funding and pay supports and services directly. You claim invoices directly via the MyGov NDIS participant portal. You can engage registered and non-registered providers for services and purchase of support items, and it's the most flexible utilisation of your funding. You're responsible for managing your funding budgets, and you don't have to follow the NDIS price guide. But you do have to keep records, invoices, receipts, and be able to reconcile them with the payment request number. The NDIS has published a guide to self-management. There is a page in the booklet outlining a checklist as a guidance to help you decide what you can buy. If you can answer yes to all the questions, then the support is likely to be in line with your NDIS plan goals, and you can go ahead with the engagement or purchase of the support or service. So now I'm going to talk about preparing for your planning meeting. As a starter, the NDIS has this booklet that is full of information in getting ready for plan review. The booklet too is often sent to you with the confirmation email of your plan review conversation booking date and time. Depending on the complexity of the participant's disability, you will either have your planning meeting with an NDIA delegate planner or one of the planning partners. The planning partners are either an LAC or an early childhood partner. They build your plan from discussions and information provided at the meeting. However, the planning partners do not have delegation for decision making on the supports and services funded in your plan, or the decisions are made by planners of various delegate levels. So here is my list of my top tips and a checklist for preparing for your plan review. 3 months prior to your plan end date, start talking to your providers of support. They're busy people and often need plenty of time to complete an assessment and write their reports. Chat with them about reviewing the goals you have been working towards with your providers, and consider if they remain suitable to continue working towards, or if you need to update your goals. Consider if there is a need for an additional assessment report as a follow-up from any baseline assessments of functional capacity. This provides record of outcomes gained by utilising your funded supports, and the NDIS love to see some positive gains. If you don't have enough funding in your current plan, consider requesting funding for additional assessments in your next plan. Think about how you would like to manage your plan and the flexibility you need from your plan. Consider asking for funding for plan management, or you can ask for funding for training to have capacity building in self-management. Also, if you find preparing for plan review overwhelming, you can try and ask for funding for support coordination, though it's usually not given to participants who have their plan reviews with planning partners with the LACs. Think about including a timetable of the week. This gives the planner information on how you utilise your NDIS funding when you have support from your carers and when you are connected to your mainstream supports. The timetable may also highlight where you may need more funded supports. Review how your funds have been utilised. Did you need more funding in one category of support? And do you need to request an increase? Or did you have an underspend in another category? Review your assistive technology needs. If you require new items, provide quotes and supporting documentation, and be sure to request funding for repairs and maintenance. If you have additional supporting documentation from your mainstream supports, it's good to be able to include this too. You may have an updated report or cognitive assessment from your school counsellor, a letter of support from your paediatrician, your ear, nose and throat specialist, or your audiologist. Additionally, you can also include a carer's statement and any supporting documentation from your GP. Reports of incidents and specific risks are also additional supporting documentation you can include. In preparing for plan review, a well-written allied health therapy progress and assessment report is very valuable. Here is a list of some of the key points that I look for in a progress assessment report or supporting documentation in my role as a support coordinator. The front page of the report should contain a summary of therapy supports, some positive gains, and how these supports are helping the participant to reach their goals. Recommendations from the therapist should outline strategies to support recommendations on how they meet the reasonable and necessary criteria and why it is best funded by the NDIS. It is also important to identify any risks to the participant if the support requests are not funded. So all reports should include how the recommendations for supports and services meet the reasonable and necessary criteria. It is important that the written reports and assessments describe how each required support meets all the NDIS reasonable and necessary criteria. Why do you deem each support to be a reasonable and necessary in response to the functional impairments, and in what way each support will contribute to the person achieving the goals set out in their plan. So you've been preparing for your plan review for the last 3 months, and it's time for your plan meeting conversation. Some of your planning conversation points will be on your outcomes and recommendations from your progress reports from your providers. You'll have an opportunity to provide feedback on what has worked and review your goals. You will be able to build on previous goals and discuss your achievements. Identify how your funding was, you'll be able to identify how your funding was utilised and how the plan has supported you for the plan period. Requests for AT equipment will also be discussed. You can bring anyone to your plan review meeting as a support. And overall, the plan review meeting is an opportunity to give examples of positive outcomes and progress towards goals and special achievements, no matter how small. Be specific about requests for funds and how they meet the reasonable and necessary criteria. Refer to the recommendations in your supporting documentation. Be prepared to discuss how the funding has been utilised and the justification for ongoing requests for supports and funds. Here is another great reference to use when preparing for plan review. The NDIS has an assistive technology booklet outlining AT at level 1 and level 2. So assistive technology is any device or system that allows individuals to perform tasks they would otherwise be unable to do or increase the ease and safety with which tasks can be performed. So an AT assessor to prepare your AT request documentation if that is required to accompany your quotes is usually an OT, a continence nurse, a registered dietitian, a psychologist or rehabilitation engineer. At the end of your plan review meeting, take the opportunity to confirm your personal details that the NDIS holds on your file. check what disability is listed as your primary disability and what is listed as your secondary disability. If you have a secondary disability, check that it is not listed as your primary disability. So what that means is that if you have a hearing loss and a moderate intellectual disability, the moderate intellectual disability should be listed as your primary disability and your hearing loss as your second disability, because the moderate intellectual disability has a higher level of funding attached to it. Confirm who is on record as your child representative or as the plan nominee. Confirm all the contact details are correct, e.g. your address, your phone, email. Confirm your preferred method of communication from the NDIA, either mail, email, phone, or by your preferred accessible communication method. Confirm who will contact you for new plan implementation and by what communication method. Confirm when you will be contacted and see if they'll give you a date and time. I doubt it, but it's worth a try. So you've had your plan review meeting and received your new plan. Start by reading through your plan and checking your personal information is correct. Check that the goals written in your plan are as discussed and agreed upon. Check your funding budgets are close to what has been requested. Also check the method of plan fund management. Some categories will be automatically NDIA managed and some will be as you have requested, either self-managed or plan managed. The NDIS has produced booklet 3, and this is a great resource to have when understanding how to implement your plan. What happens if you are not happy with your new plan? If you disagree with what is in your plan and you think a decision the NDIA has made about you is wrong, you can request an internal review of a decision. This is known as an S100 review of a reviewable decision. A request for an internal review of a decision must be made within the 3 months of receiving notice of the decisions made in your plan from the NDIA. There is a list of reviewable decisions in the NDIS legislation. Below is a link to the NDIS website on how to apply for an internal review of a decision. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, there is a link to the form, and I suggest you focus on Part C of the form. What are the grounds for this review? Explain why the funded supports are insufficient to support you or the participant to meet your goals and aspirations. Include any additional supporting documentation or information. And the participant should describe in their own words the impact the decision has had on their ability to socialise or work, to maintain their relationships with families and friends, as well as worrying or distress it has caused. Be specific about exactly what funded supports are sought, including the type of support and the number of hours. What happens if you are not happy with the S100 outcome? The next step is the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Now, I haven't had any experience as I haven't had to go to the AAT personally, and as a support coordinator, I cannot support a participant to go to AAT. I would suggest that you get some support from a disability advocacy group to support you through this process. You must tell the NDIA if something happens or is likely to happen that affects your access requests, status as a participant, or plan. These may include any significant changes to your disability support needs, informal support arrangements, living arrangements, or work arrangements. To do this, you need to lodge a S48 change of circumstance form. A change of circumstance does not always trigger a plan review if it is just a change of personal details, like updating a change of address or phone number. But it will trigger an unscheduled plan review meeting if you require higher supports for your living arrangements, if you change from part-time to full-time in employment and require more supports in that area, or if you are financially bankrupt and you suddenly need a financial guardian appointed. The most direct point of contact with the NDIS is by phoning the National Contact Centre on their 1-800 number. It's important to know that this is a contracted partner to the NDIS and they have no delegation for decision making. When you call the NDIS and Contact Centre, ensure you get a receipt number issued for the interaction and conversation so you can refer to that in future dealings with the agency. The National Contact Centre person sends an email to the relevant department within the NDIA. And the NDIA will either respond to it or you may not hear from them. So if that happens, keep following up by calling again and refer to your previous communication using the receipt number issued to you by the NCC. As an NDIS participant, you're entitled to make a complaint and give feedback to the NDIA. This is not a pathway to complain about your plan itself or service providers. You can complain about the way you were treated by an NDIA representative or the agency and about its service delivery. Also, you can complain about not being happy with your planning meeting experience or if you are dealt with disrespectfully. And here is a list or links to the NDIS complaints and feedback. The NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission was established in 2018. It is independent of the NDIS and the NDIA. The Quality and Safeguards Commission works to improve the quality and safety of NDIS supports and services. The NDIS Commission can help NDIS participants and their families and carers to resolve concerns or complaints about NDIS supports and services. The framework is designed to balance the need for appropriate protections that meet government's duty of care obligations with the need to enable participants to take reasonable risks so they can reach their goals. And I've included a link here for further reading on the role of the NDIS Quality and Safeguard Commission. Just to finish up this evening, here is a slide with some NDIS resources that you may find useful to help you on your journey in navigating and getting the best out of the NDIS scheme. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.